So back up at the barn, definitely feels like November now. It's really cold, I can see my breath. So I've got about 1,000,001 layers on, and I'm doing a quick video about this tool. It's the Festool DF700. It's like a mortar tenon for setting floating tenons in timber. I've had the smaller domino, the DF500, for quite a while. I've been using that for like sheet goods to make cabinetry and just doing smaller joints for like non-load bearing applications. And I've recently got this is the DF700, which has got much bigger tenon size. So this is for basically applications where there's a lot more forces going through the timbers, because it can produce these bigger tenons. So tables, doors, and what I'm using it for is the roof light, which is what I've done a video on previously. A roof light in our glass link between our annex and our main barn. So yeah, I'm just going to quickly talk you through the tool and how I'm going to be using it today. So it's got a nice feature above the DF500, which is it's got like two saved settings which you can quickly flip between for the two different depths. Because what we'll be doing today, I'll be joining the horizontal rail on the base of the window with like a vertical stile. So I'm going to want quite a shallow plunge on this piece of timber, because that's the finished width of that, or the finished depth. Whereas this longer stile, this is just a demonstration piece, it'd be much taller. I can get a different depth on that. I can go deeper basically. So this switch on the side here lets me do that. I'll just be able to quickly flip between those two settings, which is handy. The angle, simple, we'll be keeping that at 90, and then the height of the plunge, which would be central on the timber. And then there's two widths. There's like a loose setting, which lets you sort of have a bit of play in the timber and sort of fine tune the joint, or there's a tight setting. I'm just using structural timber, so there will be some variation in the widths, which these are finished to. They're not plain square edge. They haven't been manufactured to the same tolerances as plain timber. So I'm not too sure. I'm going to do the first couple of joints and see how it go, but I might use the loose setting just so I can fine tune that so they're completely flush all the way around. So yeah, so that's the plan. Build the structural frame for the roof line, and later on I'm going to be cladding that in some hardwood on the internal side, so that looks all fancy. And as for the exterior, that'll be covered in like aluminium, Capex and lead, so you won't see that. So yeah, I'm going to get using this. I'll take a couple of clips of it doing the cuts, and yeah, awesome tool. I'll be using this vac on it as well. It's important to have some extraction on there to get some clean cuts, and that's the V-Tough Mini, which is a really decent M-Class vac if anyone's after a decent M-Class vac and don't want to spend loads of money. So yeah, let's get to work. So that's the domino I'm going to be using. So that's a 12 by 140. I probably would have preferred to use the 14 by 140, but I've actually run out of those. So as a brief mock-up, that'll be set in the joint, something like that. So I think I'm going to go, this timber's about 47mm, so I'm probably going to go on the 40mm setting here on the domino, if I move that up. So I can go 40mm on this bit of timber here, and then this one here, I could go as deep as I like, which will be 70. So I'll be using about 110 of this tenon, which I think is probably going to need trimming down a bit. Yeah, because it's a 140. So I haven't got any of the shorter tenons, so I'll just be taking this down by about 30mm, so it's going to fit in the joint nicely. But that's, like I say, that's a mock-up of how the joint will be internally. So I'll fit 2 of these per joint, and then because these have got a bit of cupping in them, I'll probably put a couple of mechanical fixings in there as well, just to pull these sort of nice and tight to one another, and I'll be gluing them, and then all the timbers will be fixed to the surrounding rafters. Another feature on the DF700 that the DF500 doesn't have is these sort of adjustable shoulder stops. So what these are for, if you wanted to join 2 bits of timber, you can quickly reference against these pins. So if I wanted to join this piece with another piece here, if I reference them against that same pin, the tenons will be in the same spot. The DF500 does have these, but it just has one per side, which you can either use or not. But there's actually 3 different widths on this, which is handy because you can decide how on board the timber you want the tenon to be, whether you want it to be quite close to the edge or if you want to put a couple of these down and take it more central. Obviously this is a bigger tool, so it has the platform to have more of them, but I just think it's quite handy to have more than one, and this Festool quality there on the sprung return, it's very nice. So I've tested those 2 pin settings, or the 2 that I thought would be most correct for this application. So I chose the middle one and the outer one. That's the outer one, which has brought them both quite inboard from the sides and doesn't leave a massive amount of a gap in the middle for a fixing. And then that's the middle one, which I think's a bit too far out to the sides. I wouldn't want to be putting a mechanical fixing in there because that might split the timber. So using these tenons, sort of the benefit for me is I'm going to be putting in quite a big frame on my own, so I can sort of clip lock it all together, get it in place, put the fixings in, and I can sort of do it bit by bit. I'll set the base, put the first couple of styles on the tenons and do the screws as I go. Whereas if I just built this as a square frame with the fixings, I wouldn't be able to lift it into place on my own. And if I was to do the fixings in situ, the likelihood of getting the timbers lined up isn't going to really work. So I want to use the fixings, and I want to use the tenons as well. So I think I'm going to have to do this the old-fashioned way and mark these out manually rather than using the shoulder pins for reference. So what that looks like, I've measured these tenon widths at about 25 mil. If you look from the 50 mil mark, they're about 25 there. So 2 tenons across approximately 150 mil. So 2 tenons, both 25, makes 50 mil. Take that off of the 150, leaves 100. Roughly divide the 100 by 3 is around 30 mil. So those 3 30 mil sections would be here, here, and here, and then the 2 tenons in the middle. So if I go 30 mil, this is all very approximate, 30 mil from the edge, plus 12.5, which would be the center of one of those. So we're talking 42 mil. So 42 mil is my reference point. So I've just got to mark 42 mil from the edge of all 5 of those bits of timber, make the tenons, I beg your pardon, make the mortise, and then fit the tenons as I go, add the fixings once we're up there, and then shim it all out so it's central in the opening, and job's a good one. So that's the trial of the mortise spacings, and as you can see the edges are about 30 mil from the edge, which is fine, 30 mil from the edge both sides. But then the centre, because I did that very approximately, the centre's more like 45, so I can share that extra between the 2 sides. So I won't make it 42, I'll increase that slightly, maybe as much as 45 each way. Yeah, and that should be nice. So I've added an attachment to the Domino here. It's just like a base plate extender through here. So because this is now the base of the window, on the stiles we put the tenon in the end, or the mortise for the tenon in the end. We're actually going to be putting the mortise for the tenon in the face of this piece, so we need to be plunging down from above, so that just extends the surface area of the base to make it a bit more stable for the cut. So I'll be doing 2 on this end, 2 on the far end, but where the central stile is, it'll be like a mid panel cut. So we'll be folding this back from 90 degrees back to 180 or 0 degrees, and then squaring it up as best as we can and making the plunge and the cut. Okay, so I've set these central 2 marks out that you can just about see. They've got to be dead centre for the middle style to come up in the middle of the window. So what I've done is I've halved the width, which is, they're 1880, so 940's the middle. I've measured that from both ends to cross-reference it. It's definitely the middle. Then I've made some marks at 45, round and about that area, which has given me sort of a long line to rule between to get 45 mil in from the edges, that is. So that gives me 2 X's, mark the spot. So I'm going to convert this, make sure it's on the shallower depth, put the base flat, make what is sort of known as a mid-panel cut, because I've got no edge to reference from with this. Try and keep it as square as possible, and yeah, then fit it all together. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a dry fix. These longer tenons can be difficult to get in and out. I might just hope for the best, because given it's a softwood, I should have some tolerance to pound it with a mallet to get it in the right place. So yeah, we'll see how we go. So that will be the cut. Another sort of upgrade on the DF700 compared to the DF500 is you've got this indent here, which is the centre of the mortise cutter. So sort of triangulating that midpoint of the timber, the base plate extender here on the 45mm line, and then if you can see it in there, there's also a notch on the metal, and that's meeting up on that line as well, the 45mm line. So that sort of triangulates the right place. So I'm going to make that cut, and if it's not right, I've got to go and rip some more timber down, cut the timber to length again, redo all the mortises on the end, and then come back and have a second crack at it. So let's hope it's right. So after I'd made the first cut there, obviously where the base plate then lined up, I couldn't actually see the line, so I had to use a bit of intuition there, but they both appear pretty central and on the mark. That one maybe looks like it's on a slight angle, but like I say, I think the softwood should be fairly forgiving as I knock those in, so we shall see. I'll cut the other one, and I think we shall then do a dry fit. So there it is, big frame. Pretty happy that this style's mostly central. Got 872 there, coming around this side. .872 and a bit, 873. So I'm pretty happy with that. I did go with a wider setting. You don't need to do it on both pieces, but that's for the holes on the styles. I went back and used the wider setting. Just, I was struggling to put it all together on the floor because of how tight it was with the narrow setting.
and I thought there's no way I'm going to be able to put it together on the scaffold tower on the roof if I can't do it on the floor. So like I said, I didn't do it to both, didn't do it on the base piece, I just did it to the two styles, which meant only going around and doing another lap of the joints once. But yeah, went together much better, although I do seem to have left the tenons long. That's about as close as I can get them. I think when you cut to like a 70mm depth mortise and a 40mm depth mortise, it's a little bit less than that because of the way the cutter oscillates. But I'll take this all apart, trim those back down again. But before I do that, the main reason I wanted to test fit it is actually pre-drilling for the fixings now. It's going to be much easier than, again, doing it up on the scaffold. And the reason for the fixings, you can possibly see on this one that there's a bit of a cup in this board. So once this is pushed together, if there's a nice 150mm fixing in the middle here, that should be strong enough to pull some of that cupping out. If not, like I say, it's only the first fix for the frame. The glass will sit on top of this, and then it'll be capped with like the aluminium capping piece and the lead on the outside, so you won't see any of this. And then internally, I'll run some oak boards or something nice around the inside once we get a little bit further on in the build. So enough talking. I'll drill the holes, take it apart, try and get it up on the scaffold and get it fit. So it's a bit hard to see with everything that's going on, because you've got the tower in the way, the purlins, and then some of those timbers are actually part of the temporary roof covering. But following the line here, that's it. The frame's in. It's quite tight getting it in. Putting it together in situ is difficult, but I've got the laser set now along this line, so I'm just making sure I'm shimming along it as I put the fixings in so I don't take the frame out of square. But I think it's 3.28 meters corner to corner, and I've got it to 2mm within square within that opening, so I'm pretty happy with that over that distance. So yeah, it's looking good. I'll be calling the glazer to come and give that a measure up, and yeah, they'll be much easier to work in this area once that polystyreen's off the roof and we've got some more light coming in, because it's very dark in here at the minute. So yeah, gonna crack on. So here's a bit of the roof lighting. It's turned out pretty nice. So it's all square, level. I'm gonna give the glazers a ring and get them in to measure this for the glass, and they'll be doing an aluminium capping bar there and some lead work down onto the felt, and then tiles dressed up next to it. So there we go, that's it all in and finished.